It is the top of the hour. We're going to get started with the webinar. Thank you all for being here. This is kind of the kickoff and the first iteration of what used to be a podcast that Bytespeed produced last year called Esports Ed. We've now transitioned it over to a webinar style. Think of it like an online class with a lot of guest speakers and guest presenters. Our topic tonight is going to be shoutcasting and production work in esports. We've got a big crew here. I want to thank the advisory panel, John Grunwald, Nick Ryder, and Chris Weissman, along with myself, for helping to kind of push this forward as the brainchild, and then all of our presenters. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. We've got a lot of, I think, great conversation pieces tonight to be able to talk about what you guys are doing in esports, aside from competing. So we'll kind of get into that here in a second. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get going. Let's just do here. So, first and foremost, some topics for today that we're going to try and cover. Well, first, we'll get backgrounds from everybody that's presenting, kind of get to know where they came from, how they got started in esports. We'll kind of cover basics of broadcast. We wanted this webinar to be super informational for all levels. So there's going to be some introductory information covered. There's going to be some higher level topics talked about later in the webinar. So it'll be a broad range of information, and hopefully, no matter where you're at, whether it's middle school, high school, college, or doing things in your professional life, hopefully you'll be able to take something away from the session tonight. We'll talk about working within a team. We've got some great members of the Boise State production crew here. And they're going to be a great resource to talk about working in a large team. Doug does this freelance, as a career. Callum has been involved in that world too. So we'll be able to talk about career pathways and kind of that high level streaming as well. And then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. The presentation is going to be pretty bare bones as far as what we have for slides. We want this to be a good conversation, a lot of good back and forth. If you have questions at any time throughout the presentation tonight, please feel free to type them in the Q&A or the chat, and we'll hopefully get those answered here either in the Q&A session or as they come through. So, let's just start off by kind of learning who we have on the panel tonight. Doug, why don't you kick us off and tell us, how you got started and what you do in the world of esports.
Yeah. First off, thank you for having me on the panel. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of days, and it's super cool to be surrounded by the folks that are up here. So I've been in the esports space in some form or fashion for pushing on probably 15 years now, but I've been doing freelance talent work for the last 3. Primarily, my work has been in League of Legends, with a very recent pivot to the Valorant space, but I've also done work with Rocket League, with Overwatch, Hearthstone, Halo, Call of Duty, and a couple of other different titles as well.
Awesome. Callum, how about you next?
Hello, everybody. Echoing Doug, appreciate the invitation and excited to be here. My name is Callum Fletcher. I am the director of esports at Illinois Wesleyan University, one of the premier esports universities in the United States. I have been involved with casting very, very loosely through the last 3 or 4 years. I've done some pretty kick-ass events, some that I've actually done with Doug, and then some much smaller scale events. So I've kind of been around the block and back, and then I also work with a lot of our students to create content and broadcast and what have you. So
awesome. And kicking off the Boise State crew, Madisyn, you want to start things off?
Madisyn, you're muted.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, you're good now.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. Thank you for having me here. It's a really great opportunity. I have been involved with esports for about 3 years now. I was one of those students that was in Dr. Haskell's ear when Boise State first started and was like, yeah, do that. Make an esports team. Let's do this. Let's do this. I'm a dancer turned esports player who then became a broadcaster for Boise State University, and I've never looked back.
Awesome. Jacob?
Hey, I'm Jacob. Very similar to Madison, I was in Dr. Haskell's circle when the program was starting out. He kind of sent out an email, and I basically replied and saying, "Hey, this sounds so cool, so exciting. I will literally do. If you have any position open, I will fill it. I'm just willing to jump in and learn and get better as I go." And 3 years later, I currently host and cast for the Boise State broadcasts. I host whenever League is being played, usually, and then I do play-by-play casting for Rocket League, Overwatch, and Hearthstone. And I actually was on the Boise State Hearthstone team for a few semesters as well.
And last but not least, Amber.
Hi guys, I'm Amber. You can call me Ray though. So I came a year after everyone else did. I started just as a lab assistant for the training grounds, and then I kind of accidentally talked to Doc, and that got me a spot in the production room. I have no prior esports. Like, I wasn't very good at video games. I like playing them, but then I started production. 2 years later, I'm head technical director at Boise State for the student-run part, and here I will stay and continue to do production for whatever game we play. I mostly do League of Legends, Overwatch, Rocket League, and then I have some very loose experience with Call of Duty.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again, everybody, for being a part of the broadcast. We're really excited to have all of your different experiences and different backgrounds to be a part of tonight. So let's jump in and just let's cover some basics. For somebody who doesn't know anything about getting a stream set up or getting a production crew started, let's talk equipment first and foremost. And I think, Callum, this is a great spot for you to jump in, and then also some of the Boise people. Because you're building out a new space. So, what in your mind are the necessities for broadcasting and streaming, and what kind of, when you're envisioning a space, where do you start?
Yeah, so I'm happy that you asked me to start so that the Boise folks can correct me on everything that I say wrong, because their setup is just tier one. Obviously, essentials, you need powerful computers. We have in our facility, we have 2 separate computers. Again, ours is much more, I think, primitive and basic than Boise's, and what you would look for in a professional studio. So we have 2 computers. We have one for creating content and updates on the fly, and the broadcast, and then we have the other one for the actual streaming portion of it. We have a partnership with HyperX, so we're rocking HyperX equipment pretty much throughout. Depending on where you go with the budget, you can go as high as a few $100s per headset, and you can go as low as just like a basic HyperX $80 headset, right? It really depends on what budget you're coming in at. Obviously, you need monitors for the talent to be able to watch, mixers and soundboards depending on the equipment that you're using. I don't know if you're expecting me to go into specific brands and models, but again, I think depending on what your entry level is as a program or as a just person working from home getting into it, you can do it for as cheap or as expensive as you want to do it. And I will echo, after Boise State answers, I would love to hear Doug's opinion for someone who does this at home and has created great content at home. I think he's got a really unique perspective on this too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of different ways that we can kind of attack this very like central topic of like just bare bones equipment. Like, as you said, you can scale this from, just getting started. Hey, we're gonna, quick and dirty, or, you can build out something that has, multiple switches, multiple computers, all running in tandem. Boise, do you guys want to jump in here and talk about kind of how you guys have set up your space and what your necessities are in a broadcast?
So I can speak from the perspective of the ground up point of view coming from us, because we definitely, 4 years ago, before we had as much funding and backing as we had, we started out in a very small space. Dr. Haskell had to sacrifice his classroom so we could all practice in there together. And so I definitely feel like to start with anything, whether it be streaming or whatever, you need to have a designated space for you and your players and their broadcast, whatever it is you have to start with. You need to have a space for you guys, a place for you to call home, whether that be your actual home itself or somewhere on campus together. And even then, when we did not have a whole lot of backing, we still tried our best to make a broadcast happen. And we started out with I'm pretty sure it was a plywood desk for all three of our hosts because we did not have a real desk for them, and just a basic 1080p Logitech camera for all three of them, as well as some cheap headsets. And that's how we started streaming, just because we had bare bones equipment. You got to make do with what you have.
Sure. So what's been the evolution and kind of moving towards this, really great, high-end facility? Where did you guys decide to, upgrade first? Was it, the microphones and the cameras? Was it the computer? How did that evolution take place?
Definitely, we started out with a great backing from Omen's. We got Omen headsets, Omen monitors and computers, so that was a great way for us to first start out. And then we actually decided to build a stage. We originally were in the library there, so we had our nice computers, we had the nice monitors, and that was when we started prototyping using LCD screens to allow the actual viewership to enjoy watching it firsthand. And then we have since then progressed down to downtown Boise, where Ray and Jacob can shed some more light on how that setup has been progressing.
Sure. Yeah. Do you guys want to jump in and talk about that space a little bit?
Sure. Jacob, do you want to talk about the casting area?
Oh, sure, yeah. The casting area down there is really nice. We basically have currently, whereas in the past we started out in Dr. Haskell's office, basically just kind of looking at one monitor, just kind of the feed of the game, and that got us through. It served its need for the time. But now what we have there is we do have a much wider, a dedicated broadcasting desk, can actually fit up to 4 people on there. Although we've been doing 3 or more recently 2 hosts or casters at any time. But the really nice thing about what we have right now is that we have 2 TVs that give us all the feeds of the different cameras. So you can see all the camera angles on the fly, all of the gameplay. And that really helps you, notice if you're off center of camera, or they might tell you, okay, look at camera 8 right now, make sure you're ready because we're going to be switching to that in a few moments. And then the other thing is just basically being able to have the feed from the broadcasting be played in our headphones as well, so they can talk directly to us. When we started out, they'd have to pass a note, so that we could read it, but now it can just come over the headset, and that really helps in keeping the presentation going more smoothly.
Awesome.
And in the production booth, so we moved from having 1 to 2 computers to now we have 2 observer computers that we take feed from. For games, we have 1 main streaming computer, which is what I man, and then 1 dedicated just to Twitch moderating, and then I think we have another one for some other odds and ends that we feed T through.
Awesome. So before we get to Doug, I just want to kind of condense all of this down. It sounds like to really get started, you need a computer that can pull in the game feed, a computer ideally to run the stream and actually have Twitch running and the software you need, good headsets, good microphone, and some of the different peripherals that add to the overall production value of the broadcast. And it sounds like a dedicated space really helps out in building out a good broadcast. Doug, as somebody who has done this for a really long time and is doing things from home, what's kind of your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think we can talk through hardware and what are some really nice things to have, and even different areas that you can upgrade and where it's wise to invest money. But I do, before we get into some of that, there is one thing that I think is very important to call out, and something I want to make very clear. You can drop 50 grand on a production studio, and make sure you've got all this cool stuff and the nice DSLR cameras and the Go XLRs and whatnot. But if the content isn't good, it's not going to matter. No one's going to watch it. So I would just strongly encourage folks who are back at home who are thinking through what are ways that we can go about this. I would strongly encourage, make sure that the content is good, because if it's average content right now and you invest all this money in cameras and all this stuff and the content hasn't changed, your viewership's not going to change. It's not going to make a difference. That said, I am of the firm belief that when it comes to things that I think are worth investing in, a camera, Go XLR, and a microphone are some of the ones that hit those as best as you can. Green screens are cool. You can do some really creative stuff with them, but at the end of the day, they're not necessary in my opinion. The other thing that I would argue is a must is lighting. Have really good lighting. I think Elgato has done a really awesome job of creating some products that are out there that you can use that are very easy to set up, that are very versatile as well. The key lights that if you aren't familiar with, highly recommend. They're super hard to find right now, given the state of the global pandemic. But that's a product that I highly, highly, highly recommend.
Feel like I just got attacked there, Doug.
With the lamp in the background.
Yeah, it was from hiding in my basement. I couldn't cover it, I promise. But no, I do want to just echo something that Doug said. Also, really important that you guys do your research, right? So when you look at things like mixing boards, GoXLR is kind of that like cream of the crop. So for us, we have a partnership with HyperX, which are USB headsets or USB microphones. So our headsets, if I'm correct, don't work with GoXLRs because they are XLR soundboards, right? So doing the research to understand the product that you're purchasing before you buy it, and get what's best for you. If you can afford a $200 headset, right? The Audio Technica, that's the headset that you see on all of these esports broadcasts that are the top of the line. But by no means do you need a $200 headset to start doing commentary. So do the research. There are options for all budgets.
And I'll just throw this in there as well, because before I joined the BSU team as a player, I was broadcasting and live streaming on my own from home, my own Overwatch content using bare bones equipment that I did have on hand. I started out on console because you could live stream easily from that, but there's a lot of free things that you can find online that can help create good content. And to answer the question of what is good content when it comes to production purposes, typically it's, as Doc would say, telling a story so that your audience is actually more engaged with what's happening.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, I think that's a really good high-level look at equipment. We could spend hours and hours talking about, this or that. But let's move into the software side of things. There's a few various platforms out there that you can use, and I just love to, maybe circle back to Doug. What is your preferred, streaming OS? What do you use? OBS? Do you use Streamlabs? Do you use, XSplit? What is kind of your preferred way to actually pump that content out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when it comes to the options that are out there, you mentioned a couple of the heavy hitters. In my opinion, Streamlabs OBS is going to be the most user-friendly and can still do a lot of really cool stuff. Once you get past some of the capabilities that Streamlabs has to offer, which again, it has a ton. I don't want this to come across as Streamlabs is somehow inferior to the other option. Streamlabs is a very good product, and by and large, I use Streamlabs for the vast majority of my stuff. That said, there are certain things that standard OBS or like OBS Studio allows and unlocks that Streamlabs does not have. So that gets a little bit more professional and a little bit more fancy, a little bit more bells and whistles, if you will, for some of the stuff you want to create. But by far, I think you could, and really almost anybody could operate on Streamlabs OBS and go throughout their entire time creating content and make really cool content that everyone's going to love, and you're going to have a really good time doing it and never have to step into OBS.
Boise, what do you guys use with your setup? And how is that software? You guys have a switcher and some other, higher end things, but, at its core, what are you guys using as far as getting that content, on the screen and out to your viewers?
So we use vMix. I'm pretty sure Doc pays for the premium version of it. But there's a free version for vMix, I believe. So we use it to push out the majority of our stream. We'll use OBS to record stuff if we need to, but vMix really has it all for us, so that's what we use.
Also, our one-on-one broadcasts that we do directly from our training grounds in the laboratory, Doc's old classroom, we use OBS when that is just the student-run one-on-one live streams that we do.
Callum, anything to add here?
Yeah, no, again, this is going to be one of those things where do your research to figure out what fits into your budget and your plan, right? So for us, we use Streamlabs. As Doug said, it encompasses a beginner to advanced module, but there are things that are outside of its realm of capabilities, and realistically, depending on the level of content you're putting out, you really won't stray out of that. But there are dozens of resources out there that do cost a pretty penny and will require a little bit more training that you have the luxury of tapping into should you need it. So for us, we're using Streamlabs, but again, we're primitive and basic.
I think one of the best things about Streamlabs is it integrates into Twitch really easily, and you can get started for free, and some of the other software you can unlock kind of like we've talked, the more professional or advanced settings that and the different tools that are within that piece of software. But you can get started for free with a lot of these different pieces of software. And I think, Callum hits it right on the nail on the head. Do your research, look into each platform and figure out, okay, this is going to be the easiest way for us to get started, and integrating in, the hardware and the software working together to actually get things rolling with the broadcast. One last piece in this little segment before we move on. I just want to mention that there's a lot of other assets that typically get used for a broadcast. And you might want to look into things like Adobe Photoshop or some of the other content creation software out there to be able to have extra graphics or things like that. Just open it up to the panel. Anybody have a strong feeling here or have something to add as far as like auxiliary software that you guys use on a pretty regular basis?
So the auxiliary software that's mainly one of our go-tos is definitely the Adobe Photoshop and Creative Cloud, which for students and teachers, there is a discount package that you can get with the whole cloud. So that is great. And we have outsourced, I say outsourced because it was really just, we went to another department, we went to the GIM department and had some of those students actually create our graphics for us to help actually kind of encompass more of the on-campus community, be like, hey, you want to help out the esports team? We'll help you guys out type deal. And so it's always nice to see what you can do on campus with the people you have available and what skills you can access there too.
Kind of building off of what Madisyn was just saying, I do think I also strongly recommend investing in graphic design software. Photoshop is great. And when it comes to creating content in general, that's one of the things where I highly recommend, and I only say this because I've lived it. Like I've made this mistake myself in my career. So I'm saying this out of experience. Don't skimp when it comes to art. It's not worth it. Like if art needs to be outsourced, do it. If it requires paying for the software in order to put something together, do it. It's not worth putting something together that's kind of like half-baked, that you aren't necessarily proud of putting out there, because that has drastic implications on the way the content is perceived in general. To be blunt, if it's ugly on the outside, nobody's going to care about what the inside looks like.
Sure. Yeah, and I think, being able to outsource and go to other people on campus or at the school is a really powerful tool to engage more people and get more buy-in to your program. And if you can't find that natively at your own institution, there's a ton of super talented graphic design people out there in the world that do freelance work at a really good rate. And those people are really good tools that you can access fairly easily on a budget and still be able to get some really high quality work done. So kind of moving on to Callum, you've got a question.
Really quick. I just want to add, don't be afraid to dive into the nitty gritty yourself. There is free software like DaVinci Resolve if you're interested in learning video editing, and you can spend a few hours just toying around, following YouTube videos and learning how to do some basic editing. And that alone will upgrade your content, right? You'll be able to make highlight reels, you'll be able to make clips, whatever it may be. But I will also add that there are some things that you just probably shouldn't even touch. Like for me, I'm not going to learn Photoshop anytime soon, and I'm not even going to try to embarrass myself by trying to create content in Photoshop. And so there are things that you can do and you can learn, like editing. You don't need to take a semester course to learn how to video edit in DaVinci, right? You can learn that process on your own. And I don't have an artistic bone in my body. Photoshop, I'd embarrass myself within a minute. So don't be afraid to dive into the weeds.
All right. And finally, kind of in the last bit of basics, and this ties into more advanced broadcasting too, but I want to talk a little bit about preparing for a broadcast. And I think, everybody on the panel can probably add to this, but it is a talent to be able to, do this and entertain an audience and be able to tell stories. And I want, some of your perspectives on how do you gather background information? How do you create those storylines and grab stats, or how do you mentally prepare for a broadcast? So, I'm just going to open it up here, and I'd love for people to jump in and just talk about your process a little bit and how you get ready to do a really high level production.
So I'll start this one, and I will. First, I'll say it really is going to depend on the level of production that you have supporting you. So I've done some events where I've gotten literally no information about the teams, the rosters, and the players themselves. In which case you just really have to prepare yourself for the game and understand the game at a higher level. And then I've done broadcasts for like the Big Buck World Championship, for example, which is one that I've done with Doug a few times. Have we done it twice or once?
Just once.
Just once? Okay.
For now.
Maybe it's in my dreams then. But for that event, we literally get a player packet with every single competitor in it and their stats. In which case it makes it very easy for us to, see Madisyn's face being like, that's nice. Okay. But that's the kind of thing that like we get that a week or two in advance, and we can spend hours literally going through it and saying, okay, Sarah Erlinson, these are her former placings. These are her average stats. This is her favorite animal. And it allows us to create a very personal broadcast. And it creates the environment that we're friends with them. So that when we do get them on the broadcast desk and we do have interviews with them, we have a lot of information that we can relate into that broadcast, and it's very transparent or very clear and very visible. But again, that's an extremely high-end production, and I guarantee you, when you start getting into like the LCS and the Rocket League Championship Series, like they all have that content available and provided to the talent. But as someone doing freelance and working in the amateur space, a lot of it is going to come down to you. In which case, find out who's playing, look up their OPGGs and their stats pages, take notes in a journal, and have that journal on your desk. Or if you're allowed to have a Surface or a laptop on the desk in front of you. Yep, see Doug's ready right there. Have that content written down so that you can reflect, because it really does take your broadcast to the next level when you are able to directly relate information to the players that are playing in that moment.
Now, I would say just in broadcast, in just terms of preparing mentally for it, I kind of draw inspiration from two different parts of my life. When both of them from when I was in high school, but I was involved in theater, and kind of one of the big things that we learned was that, you can try to make the characters interesting. You can, work through the script as much as you want. You can rehearse, but if the audience can't hear you, then it's not going to be for nothing. And there's certainly kind of a truth to that in terms of enthusiasm and how you present yourself. You could talk about stats all day, but if you don't invest yourself into creating an interesting storyline, if you don't show general joy in what you're doing, the audience isn't necessarily going to be drawn into that. And then the second part that I kind of find inspiration from was when I was in debate also in high school. And this kind of connects with something that Doc told us, and he said, don't keep second guessing yourself. Just speak. Don't be afraid of what you say. Oftentimes when you're casting, you'll say something really funny when you look back at it, but you won't even know that you said it because you're just so in the headspace. And back in debate, they said you need to be so invested into that you're not necessarily questioning what you say. If your debate opponent says, so you're saying the sky is actually red instead of blue, you go, absolutely. And here's the reason why you should believe that. And so just putting yourself into a situation where you're self-confident, you're researched in what you need to do, and you've picked out the major storyline plots that you want to tell throughout the broadcast, that is really going to help you.
So I can build a little bit off of that, because Jacob has had the the pleasure of like kind of graded exposure therapy into his hosting career, whereas I was kind of dragged and dropped over from the Boise State Overwatch team. And I had no idea what I was going to be doing my first time hosting Rocket League. I actually did not understand the game very well. All I knew was RC cars and soccer was going to be what I was going to host, and I was going to have to wing it from there. Thankfully, I did have a little bit of information that Doc and our prod staff did provide to me, but beyond that, because I did not have a huge comprehension of the game itself, it became my job to actually create a kind of like a secondary storyline happening along the main story, which is for the people that are observing from the audience perspective that do not know what's going on in the game, so to speak, which lots of parents sometimes struggle with that. It became my job to relate it to other things that people would be more familiar with within layman's terms, so to speak. And so I was not fully prepared from the game perspective, but I was ready to engage the audience from the real world perspective.
Awesome.
One thing I can kind of add on to that, like when we're preparing for broadcast, we really rely on other schools to help send like player packages. Those are always great, because then I get to make graphics and help our casters and our hosts like introduce people and find out like who all the other students we're playing against are. And if we have pictures, we can make a lower third that has like all of their pictures and their gamer tags, so you know who's playing, and it makes it more personal, because then it's not just the other team. Those are people we're playing against, and it's fun and exciting that way. But when we don't have that, we're kind of left to scrounge for our own scraps. We have a production member named Daniel, and he's amazing. He does League of Legends, and he will find every bit of morsel information that's out there on any player if he can. So it's also interesting walking the line between making a broadcast enjoyable for people who know the game and for people who don't know the game, like parents or someone just their first time on Twitch, right? Who knows when you're going to be on the front page or whatever platform you're on, and trying to make it so you can attract and entertain a lot of people. So that's kind of also one of those like things you have to prepare for, of thinking about the balance between your audience.
Sure. Doug, anything to close out this section?
Oh, I think a lot of the points that were mentioned were really good. And I think it comes back down to this, like, do your homework. It's worth it. When you're on broadcasts and you don't know the teams, or you don't like, you can't, there are very few people in this world who can walk up to a camera, not know anything about what they're talking about, and still pull it off. And those are some of the best, but 99% of us can't do that. Because of that, do your homework. It's worth it. Look up stats, look up ranks, look up compositions, look up, see if there's any team history, look at previous placements. Like, all of that stuff ultimately builds to the story. And that's really, at the end of the day, what you're, as a commentator, that's what I focus on communicating. The game in itself is great, right? Like, we're going to get super hype plays, and they're going to be highlight calls, and it's going to be awesome and a lot of fun and exciting or whatever. But people are going to invest in the broadcast in the long term if you're telling them a story. And the players are the ones who are telling you, the players are the ones telling the story. You're just communicating that. So it's worth it. Invest the time in, do your research, do your homework, because that's going to pay dividends in the long run. And the other thing on mentally prepping for a broadcast, you guys will have to check me on this, because I will totally go on a soapbox, and I can eat up like 30 minutes of this. So make sure you keep me on this one. But anybody, especially in this day and age, I might ruffle some feathers here too, so I'm sorry. Anybody thinks that they can get in front of a microphone and a camera and they can shoutcast. And those are often the people who sit in Twitch chat or who sit on Twitter and trash somebody else's product because they think they can do it better without ever having tried it. You're going to mess up. Everyone messes up, and that's okay, right? Like, if you mess up and it's like very blatantly obvious, yeah, call it out. I miscalled that. I've done that with Callum on broadcast, where I was like, oh, I missed that, or, whatever, I apologize, whatever. But you're going to mess up, and that's okay. The people whose opinions, if you're an aspiring shoutcaster, the people whose opinions you should care about are the people who have sat in that seat. The people who have sat in front of the camera, the people who have sat on the microphone, they're the ones who have lived that day in and day out. There's this really cool quote that I highly recommend everyone go look up by Teddy Roosevelt called "The Man in the Arena." And that's essentially what it's talking about. It's the man in the arena that counts. It's not the one who's sitting on the sideline who can talk nonsense the entire time. Like, don't read Twitch chat. Don't look at Twitter when the broadcast is on. It's not worth it. Do what you're doing, right? Like, take feedback from the people that you respect, the people who have been there before. That carries weight. Listen to that. 360 sniper, no scope, 420, whatever. He doesn't know up from down.
Great advice. Great advice. So let's transition over to kind of our next larger topic, and talking about working within a production team. We are fortunate enough to have all 5 of you who have worked on big crews and been able to have different roles assigned to you. And I would love to just talk about, one, the division of labor, who's actually doing what, and how you're working together, and then the advantages and disadvantages or challenges that come with working on a larger crew as opposed to, just doing a solo stream. A crew can be as small as 2 people working together, which I think is a really great way to jump into running a stream, whether it's a high school or college level, being able to not have all of that work loaded on just one person. So let's just kind of, start with Doug. You've worked on a lot of really awesome opportunities with some professional teams. Let's talk about kind of what that looks like from a larger team standpoint.
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate to be able to do that, and very humbled and thankful for the opportunities. I think when it gets to a larger production, as a commentator, you can just focus on your craft, right? You don't need to worry about, are the scenes going to be switched? Am I going to have my stats? Is my microphone on? Like, is the camera hot? Is the sound mix right? All of those things. So when it comes to something like that, if you can get a good crew around you that you trust, that they have the capability of making something special, and you can put that around you, that's the ideal state, because that, again, unlocks you to doing what you're there for. That's not to say that it can't be done, obviously, and I've got industry horror stories that we can talk through, where people have had to do too much in order to make the broadcast work, and it works, and the spectators don't know any different, but that's not the ideal. That's not the optimal situation. So ideally, you've got your casters, you've got your talent, right? Let them focus on their craft, what honestly you're paying them to do. Have a dedicated producer. Have someone who's going to direct the show themselves. So they're in charge of run of show. They're in charge of when we're going to cut to what scenes, when we're going to run what commercials, when we're, all of those things. Have that be one dedicated person, because that's a lot to put up. That's a lot to spin and to keep straight at once when the broadcast is live. So it's 1000% worth it. Keep that person there to be able to do that. And then again, in an ideal state, if you have somebody who can be feeding, and that can be a producer, in my opinion, maybe an associate producer or somebody secondary in that role, but somebody who can be feeding the talent stats or updates. Like, if there's a game pause and nobody knows why, talent needs to know that. Get them that information and have somebody who is able to do that for them. And those pieces, when put together, really do unlock the broadcast to be everything that it can be.
Awesome. Callum, do you want to jump in here real quick before we get to the large Boise crew here?
Yeah. So starting out, you're going to be on your own 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10. You are going to be the caster. You're going to be the director. You're going to be the engineers. You're going to be everything and anything. And that's really good experience to really hone your craft and understand the benefits of each role. Because I'll tell you, the first time you get on a headset with a producer and a director behind the production desk, and you're in the middle of a sentence and you're calling out live action, and you're into it and you're energized, and then you have a producer in your ear going, all right, we're going to go to camera 3 in 3, 2. It is very jarring, right? And you have to understand that you're in this sentence and you have to seamlessly roll to what they're telling you to roll to, right? And I think those first few months or years of doing it on your own really help build that understanding and that experience, because it allows you to say, okay, this is one thing off my plate. I just need to be on the camera, right? I'm just a talent right now. But it also develops an appreciation and an understanding. I've done events with, as I said, I've done events with Doug where we've both immediately gone over to the production crew as soon as it's done and shaken their hands and said, thanks, wow, you guys are incredible, really good job, that was seamless, you guys were so smooth, you understood all of our signals. And having that understanding for what they're doing really helps you understand what you are doing. So don't take those first few months or the first year or two for granted, where you are the caster, the director, and the engineer, and just continue to work towards being bigger, better, and more badass.
Awesome. Ray, can you kick us off from the Boise perspective, because you have that behind the scenes role and are in the weeds as far as actually running a broadcast?
Yeah. So we have a lot of people. Like if we're running a full total crew, there's about 8 of us, and then talent. So it can get really jarring when there's a lot of us, but there's also been times when there's been me and one other person and we have to do everything. So I tend to do the producer role. So I'm calling where we go to, what happens next. And then I'm also in talks with hosts and casts, so the talent on stage. So I'm talking to them while talking to the people in the actual production booth, trying to figure out what's happening next. When is this happening? Are we in talks with players? When are we starting the game? Stuff like that. So it kind of does build everything's happening around you. And eventually you're just going to have to roll with all the punches that are being thrown, and you're going to juggle all the balls, and then you're going to hopefully toss those off to someone else in a few minutes or seconds or hours, depending on how long your broadcast is.
Awesome. And and kind of ending gears here, Madisyn, Jacob, you guys actually on the desk and doing the casting, what's that like working with the rest of the crew, and kind of what's your experience working in those bigger teams?
So I'm not gonna lie, the statement of it's jarring when you experience having actual literally voices in your ear is difficult. It's hard to adjust to, but at the same time, I'm grateful when I do have that voice in my ear, because it is someone who's assisting me with whether it be Ray, whether it be Daniel or Doc in my ear telling me, hey, we're going to switch cameras, or we're going to do this next, or we're about to go to a break. And so it tells me when I need to be switching my gears and be prepared to say something different, or when I need to be ready to shift gears and bring up a different topic. Also, I won't lie, the biggest thing that I have found that's helped our program a lot is a respect between not just the players in the broadcasting group, but the casters, the directors, and our engineers, is having a mutual feeling of respect for our jobs and what we do, and understanding that mistakes do happen, and trying to make sure that all the time we understand that we give our 100% together, and we're always, shaking hands and giving hugs and saying, great broadcast, good job, and hyping each other up no matter what.
Yeah, and just not only a mentally jarring thing to hear people in your ear, but it's just going to be physically jarring and first to keep on speaking the same sentence and not get derailed by hearing another voice. It's like when you first start singing in a choir or something and you have to sing harmony. It's very hard at first to say your own thing while hearing different things around you. So it'll come with practice. It's just, don't freak out about it at first, but just keep on practicing, keep getting that experience, because those skills will come to you. And another thing in just dealing with production is that you're going to just have to learn to be light on your feet, learn to be able to transition into anything, because sometimes maybe it's after a match and you've been told for the last 5 minutes that we're getting ready for an on-stage interview with the player who made play of the game. And then all of a sudden, right when you're about to transition to that, you hear, oh, the mic on stage has failed. We need a 2-minute break, go to break. And so you're going to have to think of something, instead of saying, well, we're not going to have that interview, just say, well, that play of the game was so mind-blowing. I think we all could benefit from just a quick break to gather our thoughts. So we'll be back after this. Or, even if it's just a quick thought up transition, being able to keep the stream going and let the audience the best things you can say to the audience is when they don't know that something went wrong. So being able to think of ways to go around those speed bumps is going to really help increase your presentation.
Absolutely. And this is kind of a great look, for those of, our attendees that are wondering, well, we don't have a team of 8 or 9 people to work on a broadcast like this. How do we get there? I think a production team and streaming in general is really a great asset for programs of all sizes to be able to get more students involved. There is a limited and finite number of seats in a starting lineup for a League of Legends game, but you can add production assistants, you can add engineers, you can add shoutcasting talent, you can have more people working alongside in the broadcast and getting that experience of being on that team and being a part of your program. And it's a great way to, attract more students into your esports program, and also, be able to take your production from, a simple starting point to, hey, all of a sudden now we do have 5, 6, 7, 8 people working together and building out a really awesome broadcast. So, Madisyn, looks like you have a comment here.
Take advantage of work study. It is a genuine thing that is great for students to get experience. It is actually money that is given to your program to pay that student for, so it's not really out of your pocket expenses, and it gives the students the opportunity to get experience in the field without having to be off campus and going somewhere else away from your community itself, and learn within a family, so to speak, and branch out from there.
Absolutely.
I'll echo that. Take advantage of work study. And if you're at a university that doesn't have work study opportunities, start it on your own. Just start. That sucks. And so we have student broadcasters, and just before I go on here, we do pay them. But if you don't have those paid opportunities and shoutcasting is like you want to do, every single person in this room will tell you the first way to get into it is just to start doing it. And if you have to volunteer to do it, do it. And it sucks, but if that's where your passion is, paid opportunities will come.
Don't be afraid to start because you're going to make a mistake, because you're going to make so many mistakes. And that's just learning. When I first started, I literally got told, sit here, here's 3 buttons. This is your cut, this is your fade and your switch. Have fun. And I had no idea what Overwatch was, and I had 0 idea what I was doing. And I made a lot of mistakes. And I'm sure at the time my casters were not exactly pleased with me, but it's a learning experience for everybody, and they're getting good experience and you're building your experience. And so when it's only you, that's always great, because then you know how to handle everything.
Absolutely. It's a great learning environment and a great place to be able to grow as a team. And that kind of, real briefly, to kind of end up this kind of basics section and kind of a really nitty gritty talk about how we run broadcast. I just want to touch real quickly on some higher level ideas on content creation. We've talked about platforms and some things, and I don't think we have to dive super deeply into the affiliate and partner programs for Twitch but I do want to talk about goals to set for your streams, and then other types of content that we should be looking at to bounce off of and expand upon a production. Callum, do you want to start us off here?
Yeah, so if we're looking at kind of preliminary base goals for your broadcasting and your streaming, first things first, depending on what level of entry you're coming in at, if you're brand new to streaming, you're just trying to make this a career, you're just trying to move somewhere with this, don't worry about the numbers, worry about improving. And yes, thank you, Doug, I appreciate that. Don't worry about the numbers, worry about improving. And again, one of the things that I think every single caster in here will tell you is go back and watch your own film often, and figure out those habits that you're repeating yourself too much, right? Every single caster has those words that they use more than they should, and start writing them down, right? And just slowly start trying to work those out of your vocabulary at least every other sentence. So first things first, your primary goal should be to improve yourself as a broadcaster. Once you're confident with the level of skill that you have as a talent, well, then you can start looking at, okay, well, now I'm going to build out a better platform, right? So you're going to overhaul your Twitch page. You're going to have some art done for your overlays and what have you. Make it comfortable, make it feel like your second home. Once you've hit that point, well, then you can start saying, okay, well, now we're going to start bringing in viewers, and we're going to start hitting a goal of, I'm going to try and average 5 viewers. And believe it or not, as a starting streamer, 5 viewers is incredible. 5 viewers there was a point in time where Ninja was streaming to 5 people, right? And so don't sit there and go, I'm going to have 250 viewers on my 4th week of streaming, or I'm going to hit 20 subs within the first month of being an affiliate. That's very ambitious, right? So it's okay to be small and celebrate those small wins. Make your community feel like they are your community, right? Make them feel like an extension of you, if you will. So what I would say here is be ambitious and shoot for the moon, but be very realistic, and don't get deflated if you don't hit those goals. Don't shoot yourself down. There's a million people trying to become streamers and trying to be the next Ninja and trying to get into broadcasting for whatever reason. It's a very saturated market, so you have to be good. So get good.
Yeah, I think to build off of that a little bit, if you haven't done it, this is a very humbling and very sobering exercise that I strongly encourage everyone do before they go down this path, because it's a healthy gut check, right? And it forces you to take a hard look in the mirror. Go to Twitch, pull up League of Legends as the channel, and then flip it from highest to lowest viewers, switch it from lowest to highest viewers, and scroll.
Yep.
And see how long it takes you to get past the channels that have 0 and have 1 viewer. I don't want to spoil the whole thing for you. It's going to take a long time. and that forces you to like, okay, number one, how bad do I want to do this? Like, how badly do I want this? Because like Callum said, you're going to fail a lot at first. You are. It's just the nature of things. You're not, I shouldn't say you're not. Maybe you will. But it's very unlikely that you're a flash in the pan overnight success. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it's certainly broadcast certainly isn't built in a day either, or even longer. So I strongly encourage take a hard look in the mirror and realize when you're going into this that it's not going to be a quick success. If you want a quick buck, this isn't the place to make it. And the other kind of bit of advice that I did want to touch on, 5 viewers is a huge deal.
Yep.
And cherish the heck out of those 5 viewers. And if it's 5 viewers or 5,000 viewers, this is so much easier said than done, but for the love of all that is good, do not let the numbers get to your head. If you're really successful, and I hope a lot of you here who are listening and who are going to watch this later I hope you guys make it, and I hope you guys crush it. But remember that the only reason you are successful is because of the people that support your content. You are not successful without those people, and it's a very healthy thing to keep in mind.
I'm gonna I have a quote that's on my door, just to take a page from Doug's book here. I have a quote that's on my office door, and it's in relation to our esports program at Illinois Wesleyan. I have no idea who said it. I have no idea where it's from. I don't know how well known it is, but it's literally just, Rome wasn't built in a day, but it was worked on every day, right? You're not going to become one of the greats without putting in the work, putting in the time, putting in the hours.
So as we mentioned, like, your beginning basis community is very, very important. It is important to make them feel like there is that connection between you and your audience. You don't want to let that screen in front of you be the boundary between that person and you. So when I started my original streaming career, to ensure that I had a dialogue with my audience constantly going, I didn't go in alone. I actually had my friends in the chat room to engage conversation with me to start, to help me continue to talk and keep up with my audience, and they would help me engage with the people I was speaking to. Also helped with my nervousness, because I actually hate public speaking and I'm really bad at it. So having some sort of familiarity helps a lot too. I've gone on and created a Discord page where I continue to talk to a lot of the people that originally helped me with my broadcasting career. And I did actually get to the point where I was self-sustaining on live streaming alone within a year.
Awesome. Jacob, Ray, anything to add before we move to the next section?
I think like really valuing your viewers is always something really important. They really are your core, and they're gonna make you who you are. But don't lose yourself when you start. Like there's always like the peer pressure of streamers are like this or streamers are like that. Um, there's no need to be like that. Stay true to you. Don't let the numbers affect you, and just continue to be however you are.
Yeah, just make sure you enjoy what you're doing. When we're broadcasting, say, League of Legends and Overwatch as opposed to Hearthstone, Hearthstone's my favorite game to cast, but it doesn't bring anywhere near the amount of viewers that, say, League is going to bring in. So it's just a thing of just making sure that you're putting on the best broadcast that you can do and have fun with it. Even if we only had 2 watchers watching the Hearthstone broadcast, the fact that I had fun with the person on desk and we put out something that we were proud of was enough satisfaction of me to walk home for the day happy. So don't let the numbers dictate your satisfaction. Let the fact that you put out the best broadcast that you can do and knowing that you're constantly improving be your driving force.
Awesome.
I want to kind of follow Jacob there. One of the most viewed broadcasts that we ever had at Illinois Wesleyan was me and one of my other students doing an impromptu broadcast of a match that we had no plans on broadcasting. And in between games, we played the most like meme songs you can think of. Like we literally played Baby Shark. We played the RuneScape soundtrack. We played like literally we would just be like in the chat, me and Luke, who is my student assistant coach, literally being like, what do you guys want to hear next? And everyone would be like, Baby Shark. And then we'd play Baby Shark and the chat went nuts. And that viewership then stayed for the matches, right? So where we normally average like 20 viewers, we had like 50, 40, 60 because everyone's just like, holy shit, this is incredible. So don't be afraid to have fun with it. It doesn't have, you're not creating League of Legends Championship Series content home. And if you're a student, you're meant to be gaining this experience that's enjoyable for you. So have fun with it. You don't need to be 24/7 super serious Mr. Business, right? You can have fun and you can play meme songs and you can make jokes with your other co-casters and you can joke about the players that you have personal relationships with, right? It creates a level of personality that is, I think, sorely lacking in the broadcast world.
Yeah, I don't know if I can add just something really quick to the end of that, but just also recognize, each of the games, the culture around each of the games, you can really, if you can, not have enough to say if you're trying to, play-by-play cast an Overwatch engagement where 8 different ultimates are going off or something like that. But in a game like Hearthstone, you're not going to be play-by-play casting that. So have fun with it. Bring up jokes. I remember for one broadcast, we got into a discussion with the other caster. It was like a 5-minute side discussion about which hero portraits were our favorite and not. And, when then we came back to them and said, oh, and in that time that we were talking, they played 2 cards. Here where we go right now. And then we would go back off talking about things. We would make references to Yu-Gi-Oh or something like that.
That was
since it's
me
a card
because
game.
I didn't know Hearthstone.
I know. So yeah, know which games lend themselves to, cultural references more often because each game is going to have its own culture and fan base surrounding that. So not only researching the stats and the players and all of that, but also knowing the general culture and vibe that each game you're going to be broadcasting gives off can also give you a lot of great content.
And don't forget, if you pop your casters some popcorn because a Hearthstone game is getting kind of crazy, it's totally fine.
All right. One of the coolest things I think that we have the opportunity today is really, there's this great big aspiration of wanting to do casting full time. We have Callum and Doug who've done this for freelance and actually been paid to do opportunities like this. I'm sure, some of the Boise students here are kind of in that same vein of wanting to build towards that, or maybe already have. But let's just talk about, we've kind of touched on bits and pieces of this already, but I'd really like to hone in on, what skills to focus on if you want to get better and move towards this as a career, and kind of like the different opportunities for internships or freelance or, you know, even if it's a degree program, kind of the track that you want to move towards if you want to take this, you know, super seriously as a, you know, a way to make a living?
So I guess I'll start this one off. I am a recent grad from BSU. I am now studying for my master's in education technology. My graduate degree was actually in a program called GIM, which is Games, Interactive Media, and Mobile Technology Development. So I had this little, I guess, ring around. I got both front end and back end development and learned how to edit content and stuff like that from day one of starting my undergraduate degree. However, that degree path has since branched out away from more of the gaming focus of building games to more of the actual, like, bringing that game to the forefront, creating the content that's going to be put on TV for that video game, and recognizing that my degree was more flexible than what initially I thought it was going to be. And a lot of people don't realize this, but more often than not, you won't end up where you think you're going to with your specific degree. That's always fun. And on top of that, I actually started out before I kind of decided to permanently stay at Boise for a little bit, started reaching out to news stations because with the COVID-19 pandemic happening, they started doing actual esports over the news, and they need social media directors and they need gamers to come in and interact with them to help them learn these new gaming platforms. And that gets you a foot in the door into that broadcasting environment. Even if it's not strictly for gaming, it is still an environment where you can meet people to eventually lead to your dream job.
I chuckled when you mentioned not doing what you got a degree in. So my degree is in law enforcement and homeland security, and my minor is my degree is law enforcement and justice administration. My minor is in homeland security, and now I'm an esports director. So I know exactly how you feel. Yeah. So I'm very excited, to be honest, to hear Doug's perspective from this, because I think as someone who is like straight up homegrown and has done really well for themselves, they'll have a lot of perspective. So I'm going to stay away from skills to focus on and pursuing those opportunities. But what I do want to talk about is degree programs to look into, and then internship opportunities in the collegiate space. So first things first, degree programs to look into. I don't want to strike a nerve with anybody here or anyone listening. I strongly encourage you, though, to not pursue esports degrees. I thank you. I'm so glad you guys are all in agreement. I typically tell students to not pursue esports degrees because the experience you're going to get an esports career with is not necessarily something you need a degree in, right? I'd much rather have a student who has experience volunteering at events, getting out and getting their foot in the door with a business degree or a sports management degree or even a broadcasting and content creation degree, right? So as far as degrees to look into, if you're looking at pursuing broadcasting and content creation outside of content creation related degrees, I think they're relatively irrelevant. The rest is irrelevant. The rest of it is going to come from the experience that you have developed pursuing these full-time opportunities. As far as internship and freelance opportunities go from the collegiate sector, get your foot in the door and do as much work as possible. Build that highlight reel when you have those resources available to you on a college campus, right? If you've got a studio in your space, get behind the camera, start working on it. And by the time you're a year or two underway, you're going to have a full content reel worth available. And then start getting it out there. I'm sure Doug's going to talk all about that. And then talk to your esports director. I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, they've got connections to news companies, to esports gaming companies, whoever it may be, and just get that first internship, right? I have a student in our program who his first internship out of our program was working on a Discord bot that did voice analytics for esports, right? And that may sound pretty irrelevant to where he wanted to be, which is in content creation, but it gave him the experience to go for that second internship. And it gave him those connections that he's able then to reach out to them and say, hey, this is what I've done. This is who I am. Can you help me get it into this sort of internship, right? So don't shy away from good opportunities, but most importantly, get yourself out there.
Yeah, so I can, there are a couple of different things I can talk about here too. The first thing, before I get into some other stuff, I want to start by saying this. I've been asked many a time, like, how do I get into shoutcasting and how do I, all this stuff. I sat in that same seat and I asked those same questions. And the answer that I got from every person that I looked up to and admired, I hated every single time. And it was the same answer every single time. And the answer was, there is no right answer to that. There is no step 1, step 2, step 3. Early on in my career, I was fortunate to establish this will make sense. I think this is a primarily League of Legends heavy panel and attendee list. I connected with Captain Flowers and I was like, how do you do it? Like, what, can you give me any tips, stuff like that? And he goes, dude, I can't tell you how many times I would just go on a run because I was so frustrated because I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. Because I was just like trying to knock my head into a wall and nothing was happening. If Captain Flowers felt that way, there's a good chance everyone's going to feel that way too. So first and foremost, there is no right answer to how do I become a shoutcaster or how do I do this stuff. It genuinely is going to look different for everyone. I know that answer sucks. I'm sorry, but it's true. That said, I think Callum hit on a lot of really good points that I want to echo. Get yourself out there. If there's something that you want to do, just go out and start doing it, right? Like, people are going to notice what it is that you're doing, and that will lead to more opportunities in the future. But the truth is, if you want to be a shoutcaster, you can't just go up to somebody and say, hey, I want to be a shoutcaster, and then expect them to say, hey, man, that sounds great. Here's a paycheck. Here's a camera. You're in, right? Like, you've got to be able to build some of that resume, and you've got to have some of that backing and a reel, which is insanely important. Please, please, please make a reel. In order to get those other opportunities. And the last super high level thing that I want to touch on is this. If you're knocking on doors and nobody's opening the door, or if people open the door, kind of see that it's you and then close it and say they're not interested, rip the damn wall down and do it. Do it yourself. You're not getting opportunities to cast where you want to cast. Fine. Put on your own tournament. Cast that. If people don't think that you're good enough to do X, Y, or Z, and they aren't willing to give you the platform to do it, and you're fully convinced that you've got it, like you've got the intangibles, you're good enough, you believe in yourself, and then also, more importantly, there are people around you that you trust who are telling you that you can do it, rip the damn wall down. I can want to dunk, right? I can love basketball and I can want to dunk. I'm 5'8". I'm never going to dunk. And that's where it's important for me to understand, there are people around me who can say, hey, Doug, we know you love basketball, but you ain't going to make it. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but you deal with that, right? Like you wrestle with that and you act accordingly. But if you have the people around you who say, hey, you've got it, like you're good enough, you can do this, and you're not getting the opportunities you need to, go do it yourself, right? And to not get super feel good or whatever, but yeah, prove people wrong. Again, this is really unfortunate in this space. But it's hard to find people who are willing to look out for you in this space. There are a couple, I'm very fortunate to have a mentor in this space that I look up to and I respect a lot. But that's hard to find, to be honest. It's hard to find people who are going to be willing to invest the time and to commit to you and watching you grow and succeed. So a lot of it is like a Wild West, and you're going to have to make your own opportunities and you're going to have to do your own thing. Hustle. People tell you no, fine. Go on to the next person. Keep going. For 100 asks, you're probably going to get 98 no's. But those 2 yeses that you get could prove to be the difference maker.
Really, really quick. I want to ask Doug a question here, because I think you're being humble and leaving some stuff out. I want to ask you, from somebody who has watched you from before this was even really a vision of yours to where you're at now, I want to ask you 2 questions. So one of the things you talked about was getting yourself out there, and it's one of the things that I was hoping you would highlight and talk on. I want to ask, what have you felt are the most beneficial ways that you've gotten yourself out there? And then 2, you said kick down the door, right? So one of your
Kind of.
most, sorry, tear down the wall. Sorry.
It carries a totally different message. But carry on.
But in terms of tearing down the wall, like your most recent project, right, is this EU charity clash, which is a pretty, I mean, like that's a huge deal, right? And that strikes me as you kicking down the wall, right? So can you talk to me about one, best ways you've built yourself out and promoted yourself, and how people viewing can do that? And two, what talk to me about that tearing down the wall and how you made that happen too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are great questions. When it comes to putting yourself out there, especially early on, take every opportunity, these specific to casting or hosting, I suppose this applies to, take every opportunity you get. If it's to a random broadcast that you've never heard of in a Discord channel that from a guy you've never heard of, who's looking for a caster, who's willing to do something who's asking for someone to do something for free. Early on, this is also a very touchy subject. Early on, I think that is worthwhile. If you need to work for free to get experience, do it. Now, that conversation changes at some point, and we can talk through some of that, but take any opportunity you get. There's a really awesome Discord called broadcast.gg that some folks in here may be familiar with, that has a lot of amateur talent who's looking for opportunities, and there are both unpaid and paid opportunities that are posted there every daily. More unpaid than paid, but take those opportunities, put yourself out there. And again, if you, and this is a great segue into this United project that I'm working on, but if people are looking for talent and you're putting yourself out there and you're like, yeah, it's, I'm willing to work for free, what have you, and you're still not getting the opportunities. If say you're a League of Legends caster, go to YouTube, pull up a clean feed of a game, of an LCS game, and cast it. Upload it to YouTube, share it with everyone, post it on Twitter. If there's a good chance you don't get any engagements early on, but continue to do it. To do it and do it and do it and do it. And I think that's where, to kind of wrap back to what I was saying earlier, there is no defined path to making it in this space. You have to do whatever it takes for you to stand out. And there are 100 people who are reaching out to tournament organizers because they want to cast, but what are you doing to look different? What are you doing to set yourself apart? Going and pulling up YouTube broadcasts, I'll be honest with you guys, there are a lot of people who say they want to cast, and then I give them advice like that, and they're like, yeah, but that's a lot of work. Is anyone going to watch? And that's as far as they get, and they don't go past it. It's worth it. Do it homegrown, do it grassroots if you have to, but do it. And hustle yourself to an extent. I'm really bad about this, right? And I'll admit this firsthand. Because it's easy to feel sleazy, but it's important in this industry. If you're proud of work that you've done, share it. Share it with anyone. Share it with everyone. Tweet at people. Tweet the YouTube links. Put it on random Discord channels where there are people who allow you to share your content. Hustle yourself, because nobody's going to do it for you. And then real quick around the United piece. So I am currently working on a project that is a broadcast that's going to happen this Saturday, where I'm partnering with United to put on a Valorant Invitational. It's an 8-team invitational benefiting a local charity, or not a local charity, a charity called Gamers Outreach. Really, really cool organization, by the way, subtle plug for them. Check them out. But so essentially this was a byproduct of ripping the damn wall down. I had a couple of opportunities to cast Valorant, and they were great. And I have I have enough footage to put a reel together, but I want more, right? I'm insanely ambitious to a fault and very stubborn. But because I wanted more, and there were some of the opportunities that I wanted were not coming my way, what I said was, well, fine, I'm going to put on my own tournament. So I reached out to United and I said, here's what I'm thinking. Let's do this together. And they're like, yeah, that sounds great. So I started reaching out to professional teams, the Cloud9s, the Immortals, the Gen Gs, the TSMs, the T1s, the 100 Thieves, all these organizations. To be honest, I just cold DM'd them. I was like, hey, this is what I'm putting on. You guys interested? Do you want to play? And you would be astounded by how many people responded and were like, yeah, that's great. We love it. So we've been able to start announcing teams that are going to be competing. We're announcing talent later today, hopefully, assuming Twitter continues to behave. But that's just a really good and a very timely example of you aren't getting the opportunities that you want. Okay, fine. If you believe that you belong in the sandbox and it seems like there's no room for you in that sandbox, make the box bigger, make room, go out and do it.
With that, you mentioned previously how you kind of had this moment of banging your head against the wall, so to speak. And lots of people hit that moment too. And it's very much so referred to as imposter syndrome. And if you get that, understand that you are capable of what your dreams are. And if you have the right people backing you to do this, don't be afraid to say to someone, hey, I'm feeling a little bit down. I feel like I can't do this. It's important to keep your communication with those around you up and to get past that, because imposter syndrome can shut down you for so long when in reality, you are more than capable of doing what you're working for.
And I think Madisyn makes a really good point there around having, and I know I touched on this a bit earlier, but have those people around you whose opinion you value. To be blunt, don't have it somebody be someone who's just going to gas you up if you fart, right? Like you've got to have people who are going to be willing to give you honest feedback. Again, I can love basketball all day. I'm never going to dunk. So I expect Callum to look at me and go, bro, you're never going to play in the NBA. Sorry. I love you. I think you're a great guy, but you ain't going to do it. And that's fine, right? Like that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's true. That said, if you've got a group of people around you who are like, I know that you're down. I know that you feel like you have imposter syndrome. I wrestle with that like 3 times a week. Know that if you've got that support system around you, again, and the doors aren't opening, rip them down.
Awesome.
I just want to cry.
With that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here, and we're gonna try and get the Q&A up. Just I know we're a little over time here, but there's been a lot of amazing feedback and a lot of great information shared. I'm just gonna pull up the Q&A. Looks like a lot of these have been answered with typed responses or stuff in the chat. But if anybody has new questions that they want us to get to, please feel free to submit them now, and before we get to any final thoughts from the panel.
Cue the Jeopardy music.
Yeah,
I was literally in my mind, I'm just sitting here going, doo doo doo.
There were a couple of questions. Hopefully this buys time for people to type questions. There were a couple of questions that I answered with, I want to touch on this in the open Q&A at the end. Dan Ward, tips for beginner students to cast. I know I just kind of touched on that a little bit, but just to reiterate some of that, just do it. Man, like find a broadcast and just do it. You want to cast League of Legends, you want to cast Valorant, whatever it is. And look, if let's say it's Valorant, and you don't want to pull up professionals gameplay for whatever reason, I highly recommend you do that. But if you want something a little bit more organic, get 10 of your buddies and say, hey, you guys are playing Valorant all day anyway, and you're playing unrated because you don't want to play ranked and get slapped around by 5 stacks and solo queue. Go into a custom lobby, join there as an observer, pull up your stream and cast it, right? Like you have access to some of that stuff. And I think that's insanely important. Just start. And I seem to have totally lost my train of thought on my next point. So,
but I do want to follow that, Doug. I will echo that exact sentiment towards everything in esports.
Yep.
And I have this conversation with recruits and recruits' parents all the time. When I first started out competing in Halo, my goal was to go pro, and obviously it never happened. But Halo was my game, and I wanted to go pro, so I started playing. Then it got to a point where I was starting to go to college, didn't think I'd have as much time for gaming, and I wanted to get into tournament administration. So I started volunteering at tournaments, and that's actually how Doug and I met. Was sleeping on a hotel room floor with 12 other people in Toronto at EGLX, but I wanted to start running tournaments, so I started running tournaments. Then I wanted to start writing and creating content, so I started writing and creating content and posting it on forums. And within a few months, I was writing for Red Bull. And then I wanted to start managing communities, and I got an internship managing a community. It goes for literally everything in esports. If you want it, just do it. And that's super cliche to say, but everyone in esports is going to tell you, you just have to start. And at the end of the day, when you're applying for a job in esports, you're looking at competing with, I mean, we have an Overwatch coach posting right now for my program, and I've got over 70 applicants, right? You're going to have a lot of competition. But I'll tell you what, the people that I'm paying the most attention to are the ones who have been volunteering and coaching Overwatch teams on the side. They're the ones who are going out and being and living esports every day, even if they're not being paid, because those are the people that are passionate. Those are the people that are making it. And they're the reason esports is so competitive, because there are so many people like that. So whether it's content creation, whether it's tournament administration, whether it's being a competitive player, whatever it is, you have to just do it.
Great points. We do have some questions rolling in. So rather than having all 5 of you answer these, I'm just going to have, one person pop up, take a stab at it, because it's 8:20 already. A lot of great, amazing conversation happening, but to kind of wrap this up and get things through the questions a little faster, we'll just have one person kind of take this. So who wants to share what was your biggest mistake on broadcast and how did you recover it? Madisyn's raising her hand. Go for it.
Okay, so this wasn't a fully my fault mistake, but it definitely was a mistake that occurred during the broadcast itself. One of the things I do to calm myself down a lot is I'll run away and go do jumping jacks, so to speak, in the bathroom, because I get very nervous very quickly. The other thing that I like to do is make silly faces so I can stretch out my face muscles to calm them down a little bit. Well, I was silly face when the camera decided to switch right to me, zoomed in on me sticking my tongue out. And I got called out in the chat room as I could see it right next to me happening. And all I could do, honestly, was just laugh at my own mistake and move on from it. Just admit that, hey, that was a goof. I'm sorry. Y'all just got to see a not so graceful side of me and move on. It was honestly the best thing I could have done was just kind of let it be water off a duck's back.
Awesome. So next question, when you moderate your chat, are those people who are part of the crew, or is it outside help, or how is Twitch chat moderation handled for anybody that wants to dive in here?
Sure, I'll go. So I was mod for a while for Boise State. So we do a lot of in-crew stuff for moderation. We have one person on it, but we also have some past players and other team members that won't be there physically to moderate chat too. So both is how we do it.
Awesome. The one and only Doc Haskell asks, can we talk about preparation? Doc, we had a big section on it, but if one of you wants to kind of summarize prep, I'd love to have that recovered here real quick.
Only appropriate that one of Doc's kids does that.
Jacob,
have they done their homework?
Yeah, you're basically you're going to want to get info on the team members. You're going to obviously try to get all the stats and how they got here, but look for the storyline that you can tell. Look at individual students' journeys. Maybe you can find in looking at the stats that the top 2 players on this hero are going up against each other for the first time in the season. Look for those little grains of story that you can tell to make it engaging. And even in terms of not preparation, be flexible and open. I know a lot of people have said, just be open to it and do it, but also know that there are going to be times, a lot of the broadcasts that I have done have been, hey, one of our broadcasters canceled on us, can you cast in the next 20 minutes? And be willing to try to make those sacrifices, keep your schedule open in order to be able to take any opportunity that you have.
Awesome. Next question. I'm starting a student practicum course for broadcasting. Any written resources or online resources I can share with the students? That comes from Dan Ward.
Repeat the question one time.
So Dan is starting a student practicum course on broadcasting. Some resources that we can share.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube's your best friend. I guarantee you, a lot of the things that you're going to want to teach have been taught on YouTube. Second, do not hesitate to reach out to a lot of these program coordinators across the United States who have successful broadcasting teams underneath them. You'd be, I think, overwhelmed by support from the collegiate landscape. So talk to Chris Haskell over at
I'm sure what the advice he was giving was very good. And I strongly encourage everything Callum said and was going to say. I do just also like a couple of subtle things that I think are worth pointing out, especially when it comes to some of the more specific stuff. Like there's a great book that you can find online for free that was written by Paul Redeye, who has just very recently taken an exit from the esports space, but he has this incredible book out there that you can find online and download for free around shoutcasting and broadcast on talent work and some of that. So I highly recommend. That's an incredible book. I've read that myself.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah. Yep.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
You want to finish that thought, Callum?
Yeah,
Or?
having like 4 headsets next to my desk is mighty handy. Yeah, if you're looking at a practicum in the collegiate space, reach out to a lot of the people in the collegiate space. Haskell at Boise State, obviously. Chad Smeltz at Harrisburg. You have the team down in Florida at, oh my God, I'm blanking on the school.
Full Sail.
Full Sail, thank you.
Yep.
You've got Sean up at St. Clair. There are a lot of collegiate teams that have very good broadcasting teams, and I guarantee you they would be more than happy to share a lot of their expertise and information with you. So if there's things that you're looking for guidance on, reach out to those around you in your field who have done it before.
And then also real quick, don't be afraid to reach out to the people that you look up to and admire. Cold DM them. If their DMs are open, reach out to them. They may not answer, but if they do and you get valuable information, it's totally worth it.
There's a reason their DMs are open, right?
Yeah. That's kind of a good segue into the next question, Doug. How do you make those connections with the bigger organizations, once you're at that point in your career or in your broadcasting path?
Yeah, I strongly preach humility first and foremost. Like, you've never made it, whatever that means. I strongly encourage that you never think you've made it. Stay hungry, be happy, but stay hungry. That said, and I think that built into how I want to answer this question, like, put yourself out there, network. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on who you ask, there are a lot of times in the esports space where the people who are getting the jobs may not be the best or may not be the most qualified, but are the best connected. That's harsh. That sucks, but it's true. With that said, network. If you get the opportunity to go to live events once all of this calms down, take it, because you will, like, there's nothing more valuable than FaceTime with some of these folks. And then again, cold reach out to people, like slide into DMs. If they have an email address out there on their bio, hit them up. Or even if they don't, like, tweet at them, right? Worst case scenario, you get ignored and maybe your friends laugh at you for shooting for the stars. Those aren't your friends.
I did want to add something very quick there. There was something that was actually said in one of my classes about networking, but it's a great way to turn it around, because so many people kind of discount it by saying, oh, it's just who you know that gets you ahead. But one of the professionals in a class I took said, it's not who you know, it's how many people know you, and you're in control of that.
Awesome. Next question. Are there any places I could go to ask you guys questions as they come up? I think social media is a great tool. I also think with the panelist blessing, we'll have email addresses available for all the attendees if they want to shoot information over, questions as follow-ups. We'll have that all available after the webinar. And then the last one before we get done tonight, would you be willing to discuss shoutcasting with high school students? I know high school students enjoy talking with professionals, so that's kind of just a blanket statement to everybody. Willingness to continue the conversation, maybe in a little bit more focus to a smaller group of students. We got thumbs up from a couple people, heads nodding.
High school's where I draw the line, Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
One of the things that got mentioned, I think, that's really powerful is that the esports community, the people that we're connecting with here are really passionate about helping others and passing along the knowledge that they've come into, in platforms like a webinar like this, or, a guest speaking at a high school, or even, just messaging back and forth on Discord or Twitter. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of really a lot of knowledgeable people out there that are willing to help. And all you have to do is ask. So with that, there's no more questions that have come in, and we've hit the hour-and-a-half mark, which is amazing. Before we end tonight, I just want to say thank you once again to our panelists, Doug, Jacob, Madisyn, Ray, Callum. Thank you all for being here and sharing your experiences, your knowledge, your backgrounds. We really appreciate it, and I think we talked about some really amazing things. Just any closing thoughts from you guys before we say goodbye?
Doug, you have magnificent facial hair.
Yeah, that. The one thing I would like to throw out there, we kind of mentioned how you have to make your own space in order for this all to happen. You guys got to understand that all of this is still really new to everybody, like outside of the realm of gamers. Competitive gaming is still relatively new to the major media market. And so we are kind of trailblazers and trendsetters, so to speak. So yeah, there isn't a guideline. There's nothing set in stone on how we're doing this. It is a little bit of make it up as you go, and that's just part of the game.
You will likely find yourself discouraged a lot in this journey, but I promise you it's worth it. Don't give up.
Go ahead. Jacob, you go.
Oh, thank you. Just be willing going into have a mindset early on of just being willing to do anything in it in order to start getting your foot in the door. I think it's like Amber just said, being stuck in front of 3 buttons, this is fade, this is, cut, and this is, be willing to take on those those lower jobs, and then once you're in those jobs, always be asking, what more can I do? Be asking, if you're done with your job, there's nothing better than going to your boss and saying, hey, I finished this, I've got some free time, is there anything else you would like me to do? Because most people just clock in, clock out, and just do what's required of them. But if you always have the mindset of, can I do anything more, you will get people's attention.
Yeah, and then from my perspective, if you're interested in getting into shoutcasting, commentating, just do it. If you're a facilitator on the educational side of things, just do it in terms of creating those opportunities for students. And they're not all going to be great, and they're not all going to be rock stars on their first broadcast, and that's okay. I mean, in all honesty, like the high-end viewership in the collegiate space is like 70 or 80. Even for like important matches, right? And maybe Boise's sitting there being like, well, we get 300. I actually have no idea what you guys get. But don't treat this as like, treat it seriously, obviously, but don't treat this like life or death. You're not making $60,000 a year broadcasting to your small communities. Enjoy it. Enjoy the experience. Learn from every single broadcast. Focus on being better every single time you put on that headset, or sit down behind the production computer. Try new things. Push limits. As I said, I mean, our best broadcast was our memeiest, most troll broadcast, and I guarantee you with 100% of certainty, a lot of our broadcasts will look like that next year, because it's fun, it's engaging, it's content that no one else is putting out there, right? So don't be afraid to say like, okay, well, I'm going to try something completely different. That's okay. You don't have to be like every other school in the collegiate space or every other broadcast on Twitch. Try your own thing, find your niche, find your market, and run with it.
There's nothing you can't learn. I think that's also a really important one, that like I had no experience with anything production wise, and you can learn anything, starting with 3 buttons to learning the whole MIDI board to setting up an entire vMix system or whatever broadcasting system you're using. You can learn anything. You're going to start, you're going to fumble, you're going to fall, but it's not about how many times you fall, it's about how many times you get back up.
Awesome. Thanks again, everybody. It was a pleasure having you all be a part of the panel. Thanks for everybody who attended. We'll have the recording available either tonight or tomorrow morning, depending on how long it takes Zoom to process this. But we really appreciate everybody jumping in tonight. And stay safe, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.